Hey, what's up, fantasy people? This is Tyler, Big Turd Ward, and Banjo, the dog, coming at you live from my living room. And this is the Fantasy Football Show. Today's episode, we're going to be going over offensive line rankings, which, in my opinion, is the most significant variable that determines fantasy football success. Just take Jonathan Taylor Thomas and Michael Pittman Jr. last year. Those were two highly drafted players, and they were both bust. And you know what the common issue there was? Offensive line. So PFF has these graded out in tiers. We're going to go over the top two tiers, which is dominant and very good, and the bottom two tiers, which is bad and crap. I came up with the crap name. We're going to go over the dominant tier first. There are two teams in the dominant tier. First team are the Eagles, and we are looking at, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, who I love, Dallas Goedert, who I am targeting. So I think that those guys are all going to live up to their ADPs, and they have a significantly less risk to flop this year, to bust. So I think that this offensive line is just going to help them not bust. It's not going to really make them overperform. But what we're going to look at for overperformers on this team, I'm looking at Rashad Penny, who led the league with over 6 yards a carry before he got injured last season. And then DeAndre Swift, who is explosive. I mean, he catches passes. And we are hoping that they want to, since they invested in Jalen Hurts, they want to protect him and run the ball more. And this offensive line can do that for him. Number one dominant offensive line in the league. Number two, the Browns. Nick Chubb, Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper. I think all those guys are going to live up to their ADPs just like that. The studs I was talking about on the Eagles. And the people that I think I would be targeting to overperform on this team would be David Njoku, the tight end, and Donovan Peoples-Jones, man. Like, Donovan Peoples-Jones was a top 20 wide receiver last year, and a top 15 for most of it, maybe even top 10 in a couple weeks. Next tier, very good. We're going to go over the Ravens. So we're looking at Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, and then I think that they are going to be, live up to their ADP, no problem. I think, Lamar Jackson says he's going to throw for 6,000 yards, so he might be a steal when you're thinking about it like that. But yeah, I do not think that they are going to bust as long as those two stay healthy. And this offensive line helps that chance. But as far as overperformance with this offensive line, is going to help out a lot. Like if you were looking for a sleeper, J.K. Dobbins and then the rookie Flowers. So J.K. Dobbins, he was dominant last year. I think he actually was leading the league in yards per carry for a short period. And then Flowers, our comp to him was Antonio Brown. And if you know anything about Antonio Brown, that guy was good early in his career. And we're talking about 6,000 yards. I do not like OBJ catching much, and Rashad Bateman is kind of like, hit and miss coming off an injury. And I love Devin Duvernay, but dude, Flowers, I think was the best wide receiver in the draft last year. Next up, the Lions. Hey, the Lions had a top 5 offensive line last season. They've got one this season as well. So look for Goff, Amon-Ra. And I think that Gibbs is being drafted so high. I think all those three are just going to be kind of safe, live up to their ADP picks. Very similar to last season. Even though they're not going to take anybody by surprise like last season, we just know what to expect on a consistent basis. But the people I am circling is David Montgomery, who people are kind of like not drafting as high anymore since they've gotten Gibbs. I would still look into Montgomery with his offensive line, coming from Chicago with that offensive line. It might just be super motivational for him to see all these huge holes and just run through them. And then Laporta, so the rookie tight end, there's a huge hole after they traded away Hawkinson. They invested heavily into Laporta. It's like a second-round draft pick, pass-catching tight end. Look for him to maybe, I do not like rookie tight ends, but if you're going to wait till the end, I think that he's going to be in that tier that'll get you by for the rest of the year. Next up, and very good, we're looking at the Chiefs. They're, the rich get richer, man. The rich get richer. So we're looking at Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. I was talking about taking them first round, second round, and being happy about it. And you know what? Isaiah Pacheco, I really do not want to have, but I do think that he's going to live up to his ADP. Like over the course of the season, yeah, I do think it's going to come. I just think it's going to be sporadic. I think there's going to be games where they're forced to run and games where they don't run at all. So I could be wrong because I've been, looking at the Eric Bieniemy offense, and I've, been a CEH owner for a while, but Charles Nagy is back in town. Last time he was in town, Kareem Hunt was great. So I could be wrong about Pacheco, but as far as underperformers that this offensive line is going to help, you're going to be able to draft these guys late and they might be hits for you. For the Chiefs, Kadarius Toney gives me even more confidence in Kadarius Toney. And Rashee Rice, the second-round rookie that they drafted, he's a way better prospect than Sky Moore was last year. Next up, the team out of all these, that I have the least faith in to live up to this, the Cowboys. So we're looking at Dak, Tony Pollard, and CeeDee Lamb. I actually do think that all those three players are going to live up to their ADPs. But with this offense, I think it's going to be super conservative, and I think that the piece of the pie is going to be very small. So I think it's going to be CeeDee Lamb is going to be okay, but the second wide receiver is not going to be productive. And again, I think Tony Pollard is going to be okay, but he is coming off of an injury. And I do think they're going to run the ball even more. So we're going to look at the second running back. The players I think are going to overperform. And this is counterintuitive, but dude, like Brandon Cooks is being like not drafted whatsoever. So like I do think that Brandon Cooks is going to live up to his ADP because his ADP is so low. And maybe even overperform. And I'm an Oregon State guy. So, I walked by Brandon Cooks one time at the gym. It was pretty cool. And then Deuce, man. Deuce Vaughn, I think his name is. I am looking for him to be a very productive third-round back for this team. I do think they're going to run the ball. I think they're going to rely heavy on their offense. And if I'm picking up late running backs, give me a little bit of Deuce. We're talking about conservative, short. They got rid of Dalton Schultz. Talking about short. Ferguson. So Ferguson came in, stepped up for Dalton Schultz, had some pretty productive games. Look for him to expand his role. And I think that he is one of those tight ends, like I was speaking about earlier. If you're going to be waiting till the very end, I think that he can be in that tier that will get you by for the season. All right, people. Now we're going to go to the bad tier, who we're going to start, taking people down for having offensive lines in this tier. Whereas we were bumping people up and looking for players in the first segment of this. The Texans, CJ Stroud. I think he's going to live up to his ADP. He's a rookie. I mean, you're not going to really rely on him unless you're in a 2-quarterback league anyways. Dameon Pierce, he's going, like 4th round, 5th round. Do I think he's going to live up to that? I don't know. I do not think there's going to be enough scoring opportunities. There was nothing for him last year. And now he's got a quarterback that is going to like throw the ball a lot more, even though he's got D'Amico Ryans for a coach. They're in a West Coast offense. Dude, it is very hard for me. I'm just like, I'm going both. I'm like toting the line. I'm walking the line, dude. Both sides of it with this guy. Dameon Pierce, I'm going to make my mind up on him later, but I am worried. So, and then, Schultz and Robert Woods. I would like to get Dalton Schultz probably, but he is, I think, being drafted a little bit higher than I'd like. But at the same time, there is a good chance for him to do well here. Being the safety blanket for a rookie quarterback in a West Coast offense, George Kittle offense, that type of stuff. So Texans, draft him if you want. I don't think it's going to, their offensive line was bad. It was bad last year too. Surprise here, people, the Seahawks. So the Seahawks, they had a rookie, right tackle and a rookie left tackle last year. They pulled it together, were able to run the ball and throw it deep quite often. So this was kind of a surprise that PFF had this in their bad tier towards the bottom. So they've got Geno, Metcalf, Kenny, Walker, Lockett, and Jigba, and Fant. Those are the people I'm looking at. And I had to go investigate why were they so low, because I was actually thinking they had a strong offensive line. So they had this guy named Blythe. He was a 30-year-old veteran center last season. And if you know anything about offensive lines, like center is literally the most important position. That's why Jason Kelsey's such a important person on the Eagles. Tackles, everything, they're doing their own thing, but the center, dude, he makes the calls. He makes all the calls. He is the quarterback of the offensive line. So for them to lose Blythe, they are knocking them down like 15 spots, dude, like literally. And that does give me concern about everybody here, like everybody, because, dude, like it's just a veteran center. It cannot be underestimated. I'm telling you right now. So I am going to be knocking down each Seahawk. This is a big one for me. We'll be talking about this later. All right, people. The Dolphins, if you know anything about the Dolphins, I was a 2 owner last year. Yeah, dude, Armstead was their only good offensive lineman. And when he left, everybody was getting concussions. Concussion for you, concussion for you, concussion for you. Ridiculous. So, yeah, I knew their offensive line was bad anyways. So, Tua, Hill, Waddle, Mostert. I do love A-Chain and Tyler Kroft. I'm actually not going to knock anybody down here because you know what you're getting with them. It's like, it's high octane all the time, but if they lose Teron Armstead, it's going downhill. So as long as Teron Armstead is healthy, you can't really knock him. All right, people, this is a big one for fantasy. The Bills had a terrible offensive line for the last 3 or 4 years, but it really kind of, showed its teeth last year without Dayball because Sean McDermott doesn't know how to protect himself from this bad offensive line. So this is the second year doing this. Allen, Diggs, I'm gonna assume Allen and Diggs are going to do the same that they did last year. I'm still have confidence in them. Damian Harris, who I kind of was high on, I am rethinking that. I'm going to knock Damian Harris down. I am not targeting him as a late round running back anymore. And then James Cook, whatever. He's getting taken so low. Dawson Knox, he's a short, it's a short pass anyways, not really dependent on offensive line, even though he might be asked to come back and block more. And then Gabe Davis, I am not targeting Gabe Davis. I was a Gabe Davis owner last year. He is the deep threat. He was hurt the most by Daboll leaving. That was it. There's no time for him to the plays develop and to look Gabe Davis's way. And hey, if he ever gets the ball to him, he's going to drop it anyways. So there you go. Next up, the Commanders. How we're looking at Brian Robinson getting knocked down. So Brian Robinson was a darling of last year. Dude, now he gets a Eric Bieniemy who doesn't run the ball anyways, and a bad offensive line. No thanks. Antonio Gibson, same thing. McLaurin, Samuel, Dotson, all that. I mean, it's going to say the same. Now we're looking at the Saints. I'm noticing this video is going long. I'm going to try to keep it short. Carr, Olave, Juwan, Mike Thomas. So anyways, they had a bad 2022. I had to read an article about the Saints saying that PFF just totally underrated their offensive line. Like, what the heck's going on here? The only problem is that they're going to start a rookie left tackle, and he only got one game to start last year, and it was the last game of the season. So they're knocking the Saints offensive line because one of their most important positions is going to be a rookie this year, and he really doesn't have any work to judge by. We want to pay attention to this going into the offseason and preseason, and let's judge this later. And then the Jags, dude, this is a big one too. The Jags, Trevor Lawrence, Ridley, Kirk. I'm thinking ETN's going to take a knock here. So they lost right tackle Jawan Taylor to the Chiefs. He was the third-ranked offensive lineman in this year's free agency. So this was a huge loss, dude. They lost, and he is their best offensive lineman last season. So the Jags just lost their best offensive lineman to the Chiefs. Good job, Chiefs. He was a right tackle for the Jags. This is really big, dude. Next up, the Jets. And all I'm going to say about the Jets, Mekhi Becton's coming back. Dude, they have Dwayne Brown that was injured. And then they have Vera Tucker coming back as well. So Vera Tucker is an all-pro lineman. Becton was like a top 5 draft pick who's supposed to be just a mauler. And then Dwayne Brown, dude, I mean, he's been passed around the league, but he's a solid tackle. So they could be at the bottom, or they could be like in a very good category as well. So we have to monitor this situation, the Jets, and that's going to determine a lot what we think about Aaron Rodgers and some of those running backs there. All right, people, we're going to head into the crap tier. Plug your noses, please. So Giants first up, Daniel Jones, Saquon, Waller. Yeah, dude, I went over this already. I do not want any Daniel Jones. I know he can be a top 10 quarterback, but he's not going to win any leagues because he's dude, he'll score 12 points and 30 points and then 10 points and then 28 points, dude. That's not going to lead you to fantasy wins. It's going to give you a lot of losses. So I don't want that. Saquon Barkley, dude, this offensive line was terrible last year. So I think that the more important thing here is their schedule. So they had a kind of an easy schedule last season with this offensive line, but now they've kind of got a brutal schedule with this offensive line. Just don't target really any Giants. Just get Saquon. If he's a value, do not try to overdraft Saquon. Probably pick up some wide receivers off the waiver wire the first couple of weeks and see who they're targeting. Next up, the Rams. Hey, they were terrible last year. They're terrible this year. There is nobody on the Rams that I am looking for late. I'm really not even looking at Matthew Stafford because, dude, they're limiting his throws still. And Cooper Kupp, I think, is going to be fine. If he plays, I think he's going to be a value. And they can get him the ball so many different ways. The offensive line has really never mattered that much there. Even last season, dude, he was dominating with that offensive line. And then he went down and nobody else could dominate. So it's just a Cooper Kupp thing. Now the Cardinals have the least talent out of anybody in the league, according to PFF. So it's not a surprise that they're in the crap category for their offensive line. Hollywood Brown is the only person that I'm looking at that I was kind of high up on Hollywood Brown, but now with this, dude, I don't even know when Kyler Murray's going to play, and they've got the worst offensive line in the league. So don't even waste your time with Hollywood Brown, dude. Unless something happens and something changes, just get him if you're if you're stuck on auto draft or something. This is the worst team in the league, people, for offensive line. They lost Taylor Lewan last year, and they lost 2 other starting offensive linemen. And they did draft Peter Skoronski, who I am in love with because I listened to Rashawn Slater, the sensational rookie, right guard or left guard for the Chargers a couple of years ago. He said that they went to college together and that he learned everything he knew from Skoronski and that he thinks Skoronski is going to be dominant. So they just drafted a dominant offensive lineman, but they lost 3. So that's the problem there. I still think that Henry's going to live up to being a top tier running back, but it does not make me want to target him or overdraft him. And then Tannehill, Okonkwo is going to be okay. That's short passes. Treylon Burks, this guy that I was looking at to make the jump in the second year. I am kind of pumping the brakes on Treylon Burks. That is the most important variable for fantasy football, the offensive line rankings. Everything we went over the best offensive lines, the worst offensive lines, everything in the middle, we're just going to take as average, kind of draft those where they are. Just don't put too much thought into it. And we're going to hit this again before the season because this is such an important thing. Again, thank you so much for coming in and watching the show. We appreciate it so much. Like, dude, it makes our day if somebody just like clicks a button with a thumbs up. I'm like, oh my God, people like it. Thank you for subscribing. And hey, if you haven't subscribed, try it out. It might be nice. Thank you.